Good. Yeah. I should have stayed a t-shirt. It was fun. I was the one who was late.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Brookfield Board of Education to order. It is Wednesday, August 17th. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have all 7 members of our Board of Education are here this evening, and Dr. Burrell. Before we start tonight, I just want to say that this is a special meeting of the board. We decided a number of weeks ago, because of all the discussion in town about school security, that we would spend an evening to actually walk through how do you secure schools and how do we do it in Brookfield. So tonight's agenda is largely dedicated to a review of our protocols. And so we will, that's most of the agenda. We have a couple of regular business items we have to dispense with, and we have some policies which we'll do after that presentation. But tonight's meeting is really focused on school security. There's not a ton of people here in the high school auditorium, so I'm hoping that people are taking the time to look at this video online. We do have a town meeting next Monday to approve the funding for the proposal for our enhancements to the security. But it would be great if you've had a chance to review this video before that town meeting. So first up on our agenda is our first part of our public comment. The Board of Education does reserve the first 20 minutes of each meeting for public comment for items that are on the agenda. We have a sign-up sheet. Because there's not that many people here, our first public commenter or speaker is our first selectwoman, Mrs. Carr. So I invite you up to the podium, and if we can just set that, make sure it's on.
Feel so far away over here. Tara Carr, 54 Indian Trail. Good evening, everybody. And to Bob's comments, I hope that people are watching from home. I feel like I've been through hours upon hours of meetings, and nobody's ever really come to me and said, well, what do you think about all this? So I'd like to share my sentiments based on what I know and what I've learned. I first brought up the need for our town to do something regarding enhanced security at our Board of Selectmen meeting on the 6th of June. And at that time, everybody is well aware that I made it known that I am 100% in favor of armed security in our schools. Since then, there's been tremendous commitment, work, time, and deliberations done by the School Security Task Force, the BOE, the BOS, and the BOF, separately and together. I would like to commend all of the volunteers, and especially our police department, who dedicated their efforts towards our common goal, which is enhancing the security of our schools. Whether you are for or against the plan in its entirety or in part, I respect you all, and I respect how you feel about this incredibly difficult task before us, which is, at the end of the day, protecting our most important investment, our teachers and our children. From the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate your collective work. I found, after many hours of meetings that I participated in, that the discussions brought us to a shared understanding of our approach to layering security at our schools for our staff, educators, and students. My contribution to voting in favor of the plan as presented by the BOE did not come lightly. I will admittingly say that this was not an easy decision for me personally, and one that has and continues to keep me awake at night. I will share, however, that after much discussion and consideration, I did vote in favor of the plan in its entirety because I do know that it is a solid plan. The plan fulfills my request of armed security at each of our schools in the form of police presence. Is it the best solution? Is it a plan that will work? To those questions, I have zero answers. The plan as approved is not the minimum, it's not the maximum, but I do know it is a reasonable in-between that will add extra security at our schools and addresses concerns from across the spectrum of sentiments regarding school security. As we all know, some people want no guns, some people want more guns, some people don't want taxes to increase. We could all conduct research and be able to cite literature in support of any one of our stances. In our town meeting form of government, as Bob mentioned, we will be coming to a decision as a town on Monday night. I will be voting yes, again, in favor of the plan as it is, because, and to stress, it is a solid plan. It addresses gaps that have existed for some time and is part of our layered approach to security. And I again want to thank everybody for their time and attention on this matter.
Thank you, Mrs. Carr. Joy, we have one more. Yeah, Mr. Carr, you're next up on the agenda. Please stand up.
Good evening, Tony Carr. Coincidentally, I also live at 54 Indian Trail. Having spent decades doing security, I just want to, again, like Tara did, thank all of you for your tireless efforts in putting together a plan. The one thing that I've learned throughout my years as a security professional is that no security plan is the final plan. It's an evolving plan, so all I ask, and I think what the town should expect from all of you is that you continue to revisit 6 months, 1 year, and tweak as necessary, because it's a security is fluid and required, and we're lucky enough to be able to make adjustments as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just comment that that was exactly the sentiment that our security task force said. We want to come back, we'll get this going, do it right, and then come back again as we rotate through different topics of security. So thank you. Right. That's it for our public speakers this evening. So next up on our agenda is written correspondence.
Sherry Styronowski and Janet Dunn wrote regarding school safety and security. Lisa Cohen wrote regarding armed security and funding, and Nick Schmidt wrote regarding medical consent forms.
Thank you. Approval of board minutes.
I move that the board approve the minutes from the regular meeting on July 20th. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Okay, all in favor? Okay, the minutes are approved. Superintendent's report is next up, and then we pass the mic.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Bob. We've had a lot going on, and I think you'll see in the consent agenda, it's been a busy summer in the HR department, and I want to thank Beth, where's Beth? I saw her here today. Beth Swires for all her work, and Sarah Lynch, Dr. Ruby, the principals, everybody who's been involved with hiring and staffing and getting us ready. There's a couple more interviews left, and we should be fully staffed by the end of the week. As you can see, the match of the hires versus the resignations when we get there. So we're really excited about the people we're bringing on board. A lot of great new teachers and experienced teachers joining the team. It's important to let everybody know that our BHS, Board of Education student rep, will be Caitlin Zezza. You'll get to meet her on September 7th. If the name sounds familiar, yes, that's Mrs. Zezza's daughter. We also, there's some welcome back communications just as an announcement, so the board's aware and the community's aware. This past Monday, I sent out my welcome back message to all the faculty and staff. Our theme this year is reset and relaunch. really excited coming out of the pandemic, hopefully really coming out of the pandemic. We have some guidance from the state, but there are no mandates or requirements, and so we're really excited about that. Our nurses are working very hard to develop a letter of crystal clear communication that'll go out to the parents at some point next week. Also, it's important to note, and as a reminder for any parents who might be watching, for students who receive special services, Mrs. D. Nicola Hickman, our special services leader, she sent out her communication to all of those families. Dr. Mann today sent out her intro letter to the faculty, and last week sent her introductory letter out to all of the families via school message. So if you haven't checked those out, please do. Let's see. Friday, the Brookfield broadcast, our district newsletter, will be going out. We're looking forward to get that out. And of course, our principals have already been communicating with families, but will continue to ramp up communications over the next week. Finally, it's very important to note, and we've noted that to families, that on August 23rd, Power School will be available to them for noting schedules and also noting class assignments. Power School is open for demographic data updates, as well as looking into the handbook and other things for sign-off for parents. So please go to Power School and update your children's information. I also wanted to note, working with Eric, our technology director, we have a final meeting on Friday with the state for the technology package for Candlewood Lake Elementary. We have strong and full anticipation of the final approval, at least verbally, happening on Friday, and then I'm sure documentation will follow. And then finally, a little bit of news with numbers. Kindergarten enrollment at this moment is 164. That's an average of 18.2 students per class. And we also have our paraprofessionals joining, and they're all hired, so we're really in great shape with our intentions for kindergarten. There's 182 students in first grade, which puts us at an average of about 20 students in each class. For new teachers, we're looking to hire this year. The net at the end of the day is going to be about 17. I wanted everybody to know that. And then Mr. Post from his office, we sent out a school message yesterday. There's new federal monies called the Smart Lunch Program, and that information went out. We believe in the $330,000 that Brookfield is being allocated, it probably will take us into December for free lunch for all of the students, just like we had it last year. So probably not halfway through the year, but a good amount. So I wanted to let everybody be alerted to that. All those communications have gone home, and that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burrell. We're going to do subcommittee reports before we then get into the consent agenda, before we get into the main part of the presentations this evening. So I'll just ask our chairs of the committees, let's make them quick this evening, because I think we do want to get on to the meeting. So we'll start off with the facilities.
Sorry, I'll be as quick as possible. We met on August 3rd. We reviewed the school did reports. Cleaning protocols at Candlewood Lake Elementary School and staffing. We discussed Hilliard's responses to our follow-up questions. We asked Mr. Caldwell to review the custodial staffing implications of moving our Huckleberry students and staff to Candlewood Lake Elementary School mid-year. Is it going to be a possible reallocation from other schools? Leadership team needs to relook at that. Do we have sufficient staffing come January? Do we need to do something this year? By September, the main office, gym, and cafeteria should be totally finished. The second, third, and fourth grade wings should be complete. Kindergarten and pre-K may take a little longer while we're demolishing Huckleberry. So is this Huckleberry team that we have now sufficient to move over to Candlewood Lake? There are a lot of levels of details that need to be ironed out. So do we need a temporary plan to get through the year? So gaining 20,000 square feet, but losing the square footage of the portables, which is about 6,700 square feet. So a net of 14,000. So we're requesting a second half of the year proposal and cost. Some capital project updates. Most important thing, Mr. Caldwell is going to give us an update on all the projects during our September meeting. So look forward to that. The library AC unit at the high school, Dan is the engineer working on the specs, won't be in place by the time school starts, so we're looking into getting fans to provide some relief. HVAC, the installation system from ABS is going well. Taking control of the equipment with the new software. There'll be a meeting early next week. We're having a supply chain issue for the steam valves. Work we are doing now is in and out of the classroom so we can get it done before school reopens. So looking at 100% control by the winter season. Yay. Locker room project, we're in the process of getting more clarity on where we are in the process and if all the funds are approved and if additional funds are needed. We'll be having a special meeting next week to address this. The guidance wing roof, RFP has been issued. Walkthrough was last week. Proposals are due next week. Can't do the work when students are in the building, so the project should be able to move quickly once it starts. Security fixtures, Tecton did a walkthrough, specs for window films and hardware across the district. The project is actively moving. Plumbing and fixtures, we're nearing completion of the 3 bathrooms, the floors, tiles, installation of sinks and hand dryers. It's on time and on budget and coming out great. There's some new projects, the seminar room seating at Wisconsin. We're getting quotes and specs. The cafeteria floor at Wisconsin, we're getting quotes and specs. And the electric service at Wisconsin, it's up to a year of supply-demand issues, so it's requiring the school to be shut down, so work will need to be done during the April break or summer. The rest of the paving will be done next summer. And the wall update at the middle school, abatement has been going on. We're nearing completion of the asbestos by the end of the week. The contractor placed the order for the veneer. The color, pattern, and layout has been selected. It will be a stucco type product, similar look based on the original proposal. The goal of the contractor is based on weather, so we're hoping to have it done by mid-late December. All permits have been taken care of. We have some added expenses on the site, $900 a day for the monitoring and testing. This $900 a day includes the air sampling of the interior of the building and the hygienist who has to be on site during the abatement. So we asked Mr. Post to follow up with the town controller on the status of additional funding for these services. Custodian staffing update, I see coming up on our consent agenda that we're interviewing 2 candidates. I see that they're hired to fill the position at Huckleberry and Center School. There's a team member out on medical, but we're looking to supplement that position with Green Life until he recuperates and comes back to work. Buildings condition study, the focus is on the middle school and high school. We've gotten sample RFPs and sample building condition studies from the board's on-call architect and provided them to the purchasing agent. Mr. Post will be working with the purchasing agent to refine the documents, go out to bid. Scope of the work that needs to get done and getting on the same page is still a work in progress. School security, proposal to add SROs. Dan is looking to spaces for these individuals. Not going to do anything formal yet until funding has been approved. We also discussed physical security at the schools. New business, so we briefly looked at the capital plan, but we're going to take a harder look at it next month once we've had some time to look at it individually. And the last thing, miscellaneous discussion, the high school roof job is set to begin on August 8th, and it should be done in 5 to 8 days, so hopefully that is done. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Joy on facilities? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the finance.
All right, so we're at the time of the year where we're looking at last year's budget, this year's budget, as well as next year's budget. So just to kind of recap for everybody, the 21-22 budget, we ended with a $62,000 deficit. That did include $94,000 in unbudgeted COVID expenses, as well as $16,000 in unbudgeted special education costs. The freeze that we implemented back in the spring saved over $370,000. Obviously, there were a bunch of other overages in there, but obviously the big ones were COVID and special education. But in the end, we couldn't contain that $62,000, so we had asked for a special appropriation, which the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance both approved. When it comes to this year, we're already looking at some risks. Health insurance, again, heating fuel prices, again, as well as salaries. We're not quite where we would have expected to be in terms of our turnover. We are already looking at potential savings, mostly in the realm of leaving certain positions open. So we'll see where that takes us. It's still very early in the year. And then we are already looking towards next year. We're going, as a finance committee, going to be inspecting the budget prior to the superintendent's presentation. That's mostly due to the fact that our Board of Ed meeting in December is very late in the month. So there's hardly any time for us as a committee to kind of start our inspection between then in the meeting. So we will be starting at 4. And that's my update.
Questions for Rosa? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'll move that the board approve the items on the consent agenda, which are new hires, resignations, a leave of absence, and degree changes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Dr. Brill, any comments on the consent agenda?
While you have a mic, just say congratulations to all the degree changes. A lot of work.
Oh, so Dr. Burrell doesn't have the mic, but he did want to pass on his congratulations to all those who had degree changes. We had a number of people who moved to master's or master's 15th or 6th year. So that was
Actually, one more.
okay.
Sorry.
So congratulations to all those folks, and also a big congratulations to Dr. Holly. She was with us for 5 years, our world language and ELL curriculum coordinator and director, and it's just such a wonderful job for us and brought us so far. She's moved on to New Canaan. We wish her well, and we're sad to see her go. We do begin interviews to try to replace her on Friday.
Okay. Unless there's any other questions? Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye, it's unanimous. Now, before we leave the consent agenda topic, we did have a little presentation we would like to make, and we have Dr. Ruby is here for her final meeting with us as a board. I had an opportunity to say my piece at the last meeting. Did you watch it, by the way? Okay, she says she did watch it. So I thought it would be, you guys don't want to keep hearing me drone on about it, so I'm going to turn it over to our Vice Chair, Mrs. Goldstein, and let you say a few words.
So I have not been looking forward to this day. It's a huge loss to Brookfield, and I'm pretty devastated, and I know many share sentiments. No one will ever be able to replace you, Dr. Ruby. You were the backbone to our district. From the first meeting I had with you back in September of 2015, when I presented all my data as a parent and educator, you embraced it and didn't deny our district's shortcomings. You saw it as a duty to make our district better. Our schools were falling and falling fast with low rankings. Despite these circumstances, you took on the challenge of improving our schools, fully embracing the difficult road ahead while handling the obstacles with poise and dignity. In a very short time, you accomplished great things. You were the one behind the scenes who didn't get the credit she deserved. You closed the district level achievement gap and held all accountable for their role in repairing our district. You were a true instructional leader who was dynamic in your craft and expert in the field of education. You were the brains behind the operation. Most important, you kept focused on the district's goals for students by putting a high premium on intensive staff development. As I said in our last meeting, you built teacher and leader capacity, and you never slanted the data. You just reported it. What I admire most about you is that you are not a people pleaser, and you were always very transparent. You were there to do your job. You made the hard decisions and had those hard conversations people avoided. I will continue to appreciate and respect your perspective, and I thank you for rejuvenating my love of education and helping me become a lifelong learner. I've learned so much from you. Is there anything?
So I knew that joy would probably capture most of our sentiments, but I just wanted to say that it has been one of the greatest honors to work this closely with you over the last 5 years. Not only have you done a lot for us as a district, but you have made me grow more as a person as well, and I really appreciate that. As Joy kind of captured in her statement, you kind of force people to get comfortable with uncomfortable truths, and I think we all need to do that. And I think you've led by example in that way, and I hope that we continue to make you proud. And I know that wherever life takes you, anyone is lucky to cross paths with you, and I sure hope that our paths cross again soon. So, thank you.
Dr. Ruby, I just want to say thank you. When I was a new member, you were definitely the one person that kind of came to me and asked me a lot of good questions. And I can't say I'm going to miss the emails that you send me with the long articles. I read every single one of them, and I learned a lot. And I very much appreciate the data-driven approach that you have. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. So anything else? Okay. So, Joy, back to
So I just want to say the board would like to present you with a token of appreciation for being the key to our success. That's the theme. We hope that you'll always be able to look at it and think of us and how much impact you've had on our Brookfield community.
I'm going to go over here. Thank you for those very kind words. It is bittersweet leaving Brookfield. I came here thinking that I was going to stay until I couldn't do anything anymore, but circumstances change. And one of the things that I appreciate you saying, because it's really important to me, is the support that the board, this board and the boards that came before you, gave, not to me, but to the district, the support for professional learning. We talk every single budget season about how much of our money, 80% or more, goes to human resources. And I've made the analogy of, if you bought a $100,000 car and then you never serviced it, there's something wrong with you. And so when you bring intelligent, dedicated people who are still works in progress into your organization and you don't invest in their professional development, just like the car, it's not going to work. So we had some tough meetings in the beginning because I think somebody said, well, they went to school, why do we have to keep? Well, you know, the car was made in a nice place and we still need to put oil in it. So we had those rough points in the very beginning. And then I remember a recent budget where we were trying to figure out where we could pinch and poke and pull to get some money back. And I was going to give up some PD money, and you wouldn't let us because you believe in it. And I really appreciate the fact that when we needed to transition from the, I'll call it spray and pray, or everybody gets the same thing kind of PD, because there were certain things that everybody, we all needed to be on the same page, and there's efficient ways to do that. But we reached a point where we really needed to differentiate and individualize, you know, the instruction that we gave to teachers in the form of PD, and we wanted to go towards instructional coaching. And I don't know if everybody was on the same page, but I appreciated the support that you all came together and let us do that. And that brings us into nobody can fill my shoes. Well, I met somebody who I think, maybe your feet are bigger than mine, so we might have to get new shoes, but I had the fortune of finally meeting Anna the Friday afternoon before she started, unfortunately. I wish that we had had more time together because I was so impressed with her as a leader, as a person coming into this district with a skill set that is really going to take the district to the next level. And you liked some of the time my transparency. Well, if you thought I was transparent, you haven't seen anything yet, because this woman is probably one of the most honest and transparent leaders that I've worked with. We had short, but I think deep enough conversations where I feel like her strengths in the areas that she's been working in for the past many years are going to be such an asset to Mr. Belanda and his team at the high school. And what impressed me is her roll up her sleeves and get into the work that she's less familiar with. And we talked about plans for the curriculum work that my heart was warmed by the fact that all of the principals in our district want to continue the curriculum work and sought out making sure that we had the purchase orders all set for doing that as the year kicked off, and that's all done. And then Dr. Mann wants to jump, feet first into that work as well. And we've set up for her to be able to work with Marie Alcock on her own, and then she'll be working with the rest of the teams in their work. So I think you're in the best of hands. I'm just jealous that I'm not going to get to work with her because I think that it would have been really synergistic to be able to work with such a dynamic person. And I think Lisa can attest to the fact that the last thing I said to her when we had to get together and we said goodbye, I gave her a big hug and I just said, be good to Anna because we need her. So I feel really good knowing that she's coming in and that she's going to have all of your support and the support of the principals and central office. I'd like to, particularly thank the team of principals because even though they're not all here, we have different people, the players are changing, but we had amazing opportunity to work during COVID because Zoom did give us some freedom that we don't have when we do everything in person. And I think the work that we did really working on what's our why are we in this, will feed well into the work that is planned for this year. And the central office staff, I couldn't work with nicer people. The people, we call it the back office, it's one little office, but we have little names for all the places, like it's some, big Taj Mahal. But people in the back office, the people in HR, the people in special ed, everybody's always willing to help a hand. Ken never says no, except if you're asking for money. But if you're asking him help, he's always there, as is Joan. And Lisa's the heartbeat of the district. So it's been my honor to work with all of you. And the last person I'd like to talk about is Deb Farias. When the board, I don't even know how it happened, it was like a gift from heaven. One night said, we should reinstate that position. And that just really transformed my work because, one-man band can't really do the job that needs to be done to support the students and the teachers in this district. And having the director of instruction position reinstated and allowing Deb and I to work so closely together that first year, and Deb taking over some of the duties and me being able to take on new things, I think just was really an area of strength for the district. So I'm hoping that in the planning for what happens as you transition to the next school year, that Anna will be afforded the same opportunity to build the office that you afforded me through that position. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this gift and your kind words. And this woman, who never says anything up here, is the funniest lady ever. If you haven't spent time with her, invite her to be on a committee, because no matter how boring you thought your committee was, when she's on it, it's a laugh a minute. You're welcome.
I'll just close it out on behalf of the board, on behalf of Dr. Burrell, on behalf of all the teachers and staff in the district. Thank you for everything you've done for us. You are the key to our success. And I will say Brookfield's loss is Sacred Heart's win. And I keep telling people they ought to go look into your program. So hopefully you're going to have students say, Mr. Belland said I should come meet you. Okay, thank you. All right, so next up on our agenda is we're moving on to the school security presentation. I'd like to, the action is that we receive a presentation from Dr. Burrell and the district leadership team regarding school security. Dr. Burrell, I know, has built up an agenda with different speakers, and I appreciate that. So we're going to turn off this microphone and turn it over to you, Dr. Burrell.
All right, can you hear me? Yes, thank you, Mr. Belden. So we are looking forward to sharing this information with you tonight. As has been spoken about by the CARs at their public comment tonight, and a little bit by you, Mr. Belden, we have been working on this probably for about 8 weeks now since we reinstated the Security Task Force in mid-June, and working quite hard on this. And this has not been a solo effort or just a Board of Ed effort. The police department's been with us, the First Selectman has been with us, Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the high principals, the district leadership team. It's just been a real team effort, and we're really excited to bring some different folks up tonight. It's really important to know, excuse me. Which way, gentlemen? All right. So the agenda for this evening, I'm going to give an overview of our current security practices. It will be a very transparent report on what we currently do. We've continued to build on that for a number of years now, and I'm actually really excited to share it because there is a lot of opinion and or sometimes misinformation out there about how we handle things in terms of security. The one thing we won't do is give away the school, and that's a quote from Mr. Giuliano, one of our parents who came to a public comment and said, you can't give away the school. So we'll share information with you tonight. For instance, we'll share that there's panic buttons, but we won't share where those panic buttons are in the school, or where the security cameras are actually located. But we are going to give you a very detailed overview. In addition to that, the structural component will be, Dr. Pepsowski's feeling under the weather. He was going to join us to talk a little bit about that. But Mrs. Farias from Center School will come up and talk a little bit about the structural tier of security. Our technology director, Eric Conklin, will come and talk about the technological side of security. The behavioral side, or the training side of security of staff and of the students, will come from Mr. Belanda. And then I'm going to actually talk a little bit about the law enforcement overview we have, and then invite Sean Flynn, our SRO, School Resource Officer from Wisconsin, and also staff member of the year for 21-22, up to talk a little bit about a day in the life of the School Resource Officer. We talk about it, we put the roles out to people, we share job descriptions, but what does Sean actually do day to day? And if there's an emergency, how quickly does Sean respond? And what's that communication look like? We'll also invite the chief up with me to talk a little bit about the actual security enhancement plan once we do the overview, finish up the overview. And then from there, actually inviting the chair of the Municipal Building Committee, also known as the MBC, Mr. Checo, to talk about the detailed design elements and planning that has gone into Candlewood Lake Elementary. So that's the outline of the presentation this evening. So the first thing we need to say is safety and security. It's the #1 priority for our students and staff. The key is we have to make the school safe, but it also has to be warm, welcoming, and inviting. And it's a balance we need to strike. To that end, it's important to put a declaration out there so everybody knows our schools are safe. Safety planning protocols. What do we do as a school system? And we want to share that in Connecticut, all school districts have common things that we do together. And so some of those things that we do are work with the Department of Emergency Management Services and create what's called an all-hazard safety plan. This has to be updated annually. It's about a 5-inch thick binder. It's got every plan from each of the schools, district procedures, and all of the town leaders from the fire department, police department, emergency services are signatories, as well as First Selectmen, superintendent's office, facilities. It's a lot of teamwork that goes into putting that together annually. There's a lot of common language. You've heard phrases like shelter in place, lockdown, threat assessment. These are all commonly understood phrases as we get through the behavioral piece of things. Roles and responsibilities are clearly delineated, and we have school-specific and district plans in there. And everything aligns with the Board of Ed, the state, and federal policy. We have to make sure of that. The other thing we do that not everybody knows is we consult with safety experts. So we have third parties, and we've had a Homeland Security full Homeland Security audit as recently as 2019, which helped build plans forward from there. We've again worked with Dennis, and also we brought in a private firm called Safe Zone, and they actually helped develop our after-school activities at the high school and layout of the facility and the property and what we would do in all kinds of safety scenarios to build that. The other thing we do is, starting in, I think it was March, we worked with Connecticut Center for School Safety and Department of Emergency Management Services to work on emergency module training. The first one we worked on was threat assessment. So what are the 4 tiers of school security? We're going to get into it now. We're going to start to bring some folks up to help us understand that. The key phrase that everyone needs to understand, and Mrs. Carr mentioned it in her public comment tonight, is a layered approach to security. Layer upon enhancement to continually look. And Mr. Carr actually talked about being flexible and open and ready to move at any time. And that's called being responsive. And we want to be responsive to how our plan is working and evolve that over time. So a layered approach to security, and we've done a lot of that with our task force work. So another phrase that is used in school security is deter, detect, and delay. You'll note in our plans opportunities, strategies, and protocols that deter would-be intruders or actors, help us detect. I just talked about threat assessment. And if things are to break down and actually someone actually is on the property, how do we delay so we can get our emergency services there to support us? And so the 4 tiers of school safety are structural, technological, behavior, and law enforcement. So I'd actually like to invite Mrs. Farias up to come talk a little bit and help me with this slide on structural actions taken. So some of the things, and Deb's going to kind of tell a little bit of a story of how things work, but access control into buildings is controlled through sally ports or man traps as they're called. It's a double entry system. We have the buzzed visitor system. Visitors must have a purpose. We replace and repair outside doors and locks. There's a school dude custodial and maintenance management system where reports are given and we get there and fix those locks. The key thing is keeping those doors locked. We know that. And then we have strategically placed film, intruder-resistant film, on glass doors and windows in certain areas. Inside the building, staff have keys to lock their classroom doors from the inside, including daily substitutes that comes in. It's really important. And then their the Kenwood Lake plan has a keying and access management system that we're putting together. Is very cohesive, very coherent. We just had a meeting on August 15th, and then most recently this week, August 15th. And then, like I said, Mr. Checo will talk a little bit about that tonight. So Deb, can you come up and share a little bit about structural and how, because you just said that. I'm sorry. Please.
Sure. So I'm not sure that this is much of a story. First of all, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of the structural actions at our school. There's a beautiful picture of the Sallyport area of Center School. So when a visitor comes to the door, as many of you have done so, there's a little buzzer system. So there's a doorbell, so you go and you press the doorbell, and that's when the secretarial staff can press the talk button and have a conversation with the visitor who's outside of the school building. All of the doors are locked. There's no entry into the building without being buzzed in and ringing the doorbell on the front entrance. The secretary will ask, first of all, greet and say, hello, how are you doing? How can I help you? And the visitor has to introduce themselves and why they're there. They also have to show a photo ID and present the photo ID into the camera so that the secretary can look and see that the photo matches with the person that's there on the camera. And at that point, they can be buzzed in to the building. They're not yet in the school area because of the Sallyport door, the double entry door, and they still don't have access to get into the main office. They would have to be buzzed into the main office as well. So you can see that there's like a little, movie theater ticket window there, and that's where the visitor would go and be able to speak to the secretary that's greeting them, be able to show their ID and give them their driver's license. And at that point, the driver's license would be put into the Raptor system, which I know Mr. Conklin is going to speak to in a few minutes. And there, that's really just to look at the sex offender database. And assuming that there are no red flags, then the visitor is given a printed from the Raptor system visitor pass to be able to go and enter the building. They're still not There's no entry into the building until they're buzzed in to that door that you can see there, the Sally Port door, and then there's entry into the building. If the visitor knows where they're going and someone's expecting them, they can go, and if not, then they're escorted by somebody to the place that they're going. And then they have entry into the school. So as you can see, when Dr. Bill was talking about deter, and delay, I don't remember the other day, thank you, and detect, some of the structural features certainly go toward those areas, all of them actually. So those are some of the structural features, just to give you an idea, to walk you through the process of how you would gain entry into the building.
Deb, I think you could make that into a story, maybe a little children's book of how you get into a Brookfield school. I think that could be a good one. Oh yes. So I forgot about that, Bob, thank you. So it was early in, like Dr. Rubio, reminisce back to 2015. So early on in my tenure, school had started in 2015, it was probably September, and I didn't bring my swipe badge, but I had my license, so I was buzzed in. And the next person I got to, it was a different, happened to be a clerk in the office at the time, not one of the secretaries. And the folks in the office knew who I was, so they were anticipating a quick buzz and I'd get through the Sally Port. And I'll leave the person nameless. They said, wait a second, who are you? I want to see your license. And so I gladly handed over my license, and everybody was a little bit embarrassed. And they said, that's the superintendent, you should let him in. And she, oh my gosh, I should have let you in. I said, no, you did your job. It's exactly what we expect you to do. Hold me up, double check, make sure everything is copacetic. So we were really happy about that. And we also have some stories, I won't bore you with them, where we've had a false positive on the sex offender registry on the Raptorware. And if you want to talk about a bunch of mama bears at a school, and custodians and everyone else, secretaries, teachers, when they hear that buzz, swarm a Sally Port to make sure our kids are going to be safe. I can tell you, when you have that kind of commitment and devotion to our students, the schools are safe. It's pretty darn good. All right, so we're going to move to the next slide. Technological. So some of the actions taken, I'll invite Eric Conklin over when he's ready. I think, Eric's over there. There's a lot we've done, and Eric is going to give a little bit of detail, but just kind of reading some highlights from the slide. We have cameras. We talked about the swipe badge access. I mentioned panic buttons earlier when I opened my comments. We have all call from all the phones in the district, meaning an all call where a teacher can actually, or a staff member can make an all call from any phone if they suspect a reason where it's serious enough and we need to call a lockdown. They don't have to waste time running to the office or trying to call the office. They have that authority, and the principals will be going over that, and Mark can talk to that and the training aspect of things. We've made a lot of upgrades to the PA systems, especially in areas, maybe some stairwell areas, near bathroom areas where, or just because of the age of our facilities, where the audio just wasn't as good. The Raptorware was mentioned, I'll let Eric talk to that. We have classroom phones that dial 911 directly. We have 24/7 monitoring of internet activity. It's a firm called Securely, and Eric really can talk to that. I think that's going to be an interesting one. Share a little bit about Eric. And then certainly we're working on a lot of cybersecurity initiatives. So I'll turn that over to you. Eric, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Burrell. So some of these are, and I'll mention when I get to them, they are in a lot of collaboration with Dan Caldwell and the facilities department. So technology does not act alone in a lot of this. Like a lot of things, especially related to security, it truly is a team effort to make sure that everybody's safe. So again, the video cameras that Dr. Burrell mentioned and the swipe access badges, we do work closely with facilities on maintaining and supporting those, making sure they work. HR produces our badges and makes sure that people have the right permissions to get into the building. And I'm talking about staff members get into the buildings that they're supposed to get into at the times that they are supposed to get into. Whenever we do have an issue with a door that's, say, jammed or a badge isn't working, we do try to fix that in-house first. Dan's team is incredibly responsive in trying to fix the door. We do have a local vendor that supports our cameras and badge access and is very, very, very responsive in supporting us when we do have an issue, which is great. Every office does have the panic buttons. Again, not to give away the school. They exist in the school, not going to say where. Excuse me. The common all-call phones in the district, that is something we actually worked on just before the pandemic. That was an initiative we took on where each school has a separate button combination that the teachers know. It's in their emergency folders. They dial that button, hit pound, and they dial that combination, hit pound, and can produce an all-call that goes out through the PA system just like the office does when they have to make an all-call, just like they do when they call for buses or anything like that. The facilities team really headed this one, the upgrades to the PA systems. I know a couple of our schools had some dead zones. Again, that was another initiative taken during before the pandemic. I got to work with Mr. Caldwell on some of those initiatives, but all of those gaps in coverage have since been addressed, and everybody in the building can hear any announcement. And it's going to be even more incredible at the new Canoga Lake School when that whole audio system goes into place. I'm going to talk a little more on the Raptorware. So yes, every visitor to the building is expected to present a photo identification that gets scanned, checked against the sex offender database registry. That is all that this system is to do. It is to check the sex offender registry, but also to produce a photo identification badge. So if you've never gotten one before, what it does is it scans your license and also grabs the photo of your license, prints you a badge that has your picture on it, the location that you're going, and the time that you entered. That person is expected to give that badge back, that little sticker badge, back to the main office before they leave, in which they then get signed out of the building. So you not only get signed in, but you also get signed out of the building. While staff of the school that they belong in have badge access to get in, if it's not your normal building, so for example myself, if I'm visiting one of the schools, we ask and we really promote our staff to not use your badge to go into one of the side entrances, but to go into the main entrance. Go to the main entrance, the main office staff should know that you're there. They can sign you in the Raptor system as well. You don't have to produce your photo identification and get a badge, you use your employee badge, but it can keep track of who's in the building at the time, who's a visitor, and who leaves the building. When the system does check the sex offender database, it does give the staff an opportunity to check to see if it's a match. Right? You could have two people with the same name, same birthday, one's a sex offender and one's not. And so you do have to have an opportunity to check that. If the information doesn't match, they can hit no, and the person can be signed in, take their badge, and go on their way to their destination. If there is a match, we have it set where the principal gets a email and text message notification, as well as designated individuals in the school, and definitely the SRO in each building and the youth officer that was there at the time would actually get a notification and be able to respond immediately, determine what the person's business is in the building. If they do have a business in the building, they would then be escorted throughout the building, or if they don't have a business in the building that is warranted, they are asked to leave. Classroom phones dialing directly 911. This is actually now a law that went in, I believe, in early 2020. I was just looking it up before. What this basically means is, if many of you know from offices or classrooms or schools, you often have to dial a digit to get out to an external number. So, 9, 860, dial the number, or 8. That can waste precious time, especially if you're in a place where you don't know what that number is. It could be 2 digits, it could be an external button, and so it is actually a federal law that classroom phones dial 911 directly without any additional button combinations. And so we had to follow that, and we've done that district-wide. We do check that on occasion, especially if we've changed extensions, changed phones, moved things around. We do check on occasion. We call up dispatch, tell them we're calling 911 and make sure that it works. Something newer to the district, as Dr. Groh mentioned here, is our 24/7 monitoring of internet activity with a platform called Securely. This kind of enters more into our threat assessment. And this is a platform where we are now able to monitor the web activity of students using district Google accounts and district devices 24/7, no matter where they are, whether they're on our school network or in Starbucks on public Wi-Fi. As long as they're connected to the internet, we can monitor. The idea of this is looking for keywords and searches, looking for indications that the student is going to harm somebody else, have self-harm. We've rolled this out at the elementary level, and not to go into too much detail, but we rolled this out in the elementary level in the spring. We actually had a search that was questionable. One of our techs brought it to me. I brought it to the principal of that building, and it turns out that they got to have a discussion with a student that they never would have had if it wasn't for this tool. And so it has already helped a student, and we are looking forward to see how it can help more, and keep an eye as we really turn towards not only physical security, but also threat assessment and looking at the security online. And that rolls into cybersecurity initiatives. While we see cybersecurity as a lot of the things happening in the news with hacks and ransom, and taking over of networks, we also look at protecting phishing attacks, phishing schemes, spamming attacks, things that might lure students into areas where they shouldn't be and shouldn't go. And so there's a lot of initiatives that we look forward to there as we partner with the state in how they support us. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what some of the things we're implementing and some of the things we're doing, but we regularly, daily monitor cybersecurity initiatives, changes. We've seen in the last couple of years that it's something that changes constantly. And so we always have to stay ahead of it, which isn't always easy to do. So, yep.
Thanks, Eric. That was really comprehensive. It's important to note that the Security Task Force over the years and the combination of the Homeland Security Audit are what produced the actions here over time. And that's really important, and we're able to bring these actions or these initiatives or these needs, and many of them have a budget implication, to work through with the Facilities Committee or the Finance Committee and work them through in our budget. So that's an important note as well. All right, I'm going to invite Mr. Bland down for the behavioral piece, which is the training piece and things that are implemented and underway. And rather than me read, I'll turn it over to the esteemed Mr. Mark Bland.
Thank you, Dr. Brill, and hello, everybody. Again, I'm not going to read through this list specifically. You can obviously take a look at some of the things that we're working through. It's important to note, as you see that first bullet that's up there, as we start the school year, it's always important to retrain and reactivate the staff with our protocols and procedures. That's things that every building principal will be doing with their staff the first days of school. Oftentimes we'll invite, not oftentimes, we will have our SRO present, likely I imagine at the middle school. Officer Flynn does go as well and talks about some of those emergency and safety protocols and procedures. We talk about the different kinds of drills, how those drills are initiated in the event of the basics in terms of lockdown drills. We do talk about other emergency drills in terms of fire drills, as well as sometimes we might need to practice a shelter in place or hold in place. Some people call it lock-in. But these are all things that are covered in our all hazard safety and security plans in terms of how we conduct these particular drills, what protocols are in place. Staff are also informed of how they can use their classroom phones in the event that they needed to call, and Mr. Conklin talked about that, the ability to access the PA system, call a lockdown if needed, or call 911. So we do review with staff all those procedures. It is always a difficult conversation to have, and I think someone described it best. I think I was talking to Sergeant Osich last week, talked about teachers and educators with their flock who wanted to take care of them. And so we go through in depth and how to do that in the event of a lockdown. We also do things in terms of reunification, attendance protocols. When we go outside for a fire drill, we want to make sure that we're taking accurate attendance and accounting for all the different kids that are there. So we have protocols in place. There's emergency folders. We review that quite extensively with the staff. Once the students come back, we do also do presentations with the staff. The students, when we go through some of the things that they could possibly hear and what to react and what to do. One of the big questions is, what do I do if I'm in the bathroom when this happens, right? Because we always talk about it in the classroom, but we do talk about with kids. What do I do if there's a fire drill or if there's a lockdown drill called and I'm in the bathroom? And we talk about kids with what they're supposed to do from those particular standpoints. Also giving them a question and answer session so they can ask questions as needed. And then we do these drills once a month. We don't do every type of drill every month. We do at least 2 fire drills, 1 a month. We do 10 in a school year. We are required by state law to do that. We record those and report that out. And then other types of drills we do, working with my SRO, I've had great relationships. For example, Brian Flanagan was very upfront about choosing random times for drills. Doing them when they're inconvenient for all of us, right? It makes really good sense if you do a fire drill when it's the least obtrusive to education and teaching. So we tend to try to avoid lunch times or passing in the hallway during those times, but then we want to try to do them then as well. Things where we've looked at, we haven't necessarily done them this past year, but as we will practice this, we've done things where we'll actually hold a sign that says, there's a fire at this exit. It's not an actual fire, it just helps kids. They get so used to going on a certain exit a certain way, we throw them those curveballs and talk about it. I think the important thing too that we talk about with every drill, whether it be a lockdown or a fire drill, staff, the administrators are throughout the course of the building, oftentimes with custodians and SROs, and oftentimes we've had Chief Puglisi has come up and been a part of those drills as well. One of the things I feel very comfortable with, and I say this to people that ask, what's it like being a principal and talking about school safety and security, I can't give the police department enough credit for the work that they do. They are on it, and I'm really appreciative that I'm working in a community where that's I know Officer Flynn and Chief Puglisi are here today, so I want to thank them for all the work they do. I know it's thankless work, but I feel unbelievably comfortable with you guys here, so I truly appreciate that. I think the other thing that's important to know too is that we do, depending on how you determine hot wash or meet and have a conversation afterwards, where we get all the people that observed the drill, the police department, if they're there, school security, administrators, and talk about what we saw. When we go through and check doors, are there any things we need to look at? Do we need to remind kids about what to do when they're in the bathroom? Did someone not close their blinds? We go through it, we talk about it, and then we reinforce with the staff. Okay, here's what we saw today. Not admonishing anybody, but here's what we saw, and here's how we can continue to get better. So by doing that drill in practice, right, and trying to keep things fresh and new and a little bit different, it sadly keeps us on our toes, but that's what we want. So that in the event of an actual emergency, if it ever was to happen, we're ready. And we know that fire drills are most likely the thing we're ever going to have to deal with. And so we focus on that significantly. Another thing that's on there is the Say Something app. You can see that pretty clearly. It's an extensive program. We're really excited to be on the wait list. It takes a little bit of time. I know Eric had talked about that previously, and we're looking forward to being able to get on board with that particular program through San Diego Promise in January. So it's going to give a lot of opportunity. We have 896 students, a lot of eyes and ears about things that are going on in and around the building. And so kids understanding to see something, say something, and we get a lot of information, help and support for any of those outskirt behavioral types of things that people may be concerned of. And this app is going to go a long way to help us with that as well. Did I miss anything? I'm sure there's something else, but that's a general overview. Thank
Thank you, Mr. Blanda. So you can see there's a lot that goes into the training of staff. You can see the detail in which Eric and Mark and Deb have talked about everything we have in place. The last tier that I'd like to talk about is law enforcement. And like I said, I'll be inviting the chief and Officer Flynn up in just a second. To echo what Mr. Blanda said, I have had the absolute pleasure, joy, and honor of working with 3 incredible police chief leaders, starting with Robin Montgomery, and then Jay Purcell, and now John Puglisi. It's never an easy job. It is stressful. They are always there for us. Call the cell phone, and we are in touch. It's that simple. They call me. They give me heads ups. We work directly with our SROs. We have such a just easy, smooth working relationship. I couldn't ask for anything more and more support. So thank you, gentlemen, and the entire department. So what do we do with law enforcement and our first responders? I think it's really important that what is our security staffing? So as we get ready to talk about the enhancement plan in the next slide or two, is what do we actually have right now? And I know it's been talked about over the course of the summer. It's important to really lay that out for everyone. So at the high school, we actually have an armed school resource officer, or SRO, and an unarmed security officer. So that's our current security staffing at the high school. At the middle school, we mentioned Officer Flynn, who will be up here in just a second. He's our other SRO. School resource officers are full sworn police officers, and they are armed. At the elementary schools, both Huckleberry and Center School, our youth officer has special training the SROs actually have special training to be school resource officers. Our youth officer has special training to be a youth officer. Lots of training goes into all these positions. Is also a sworn officer and a leader in the community, and splits time between both schools. Police officers are employees of the police department. Our unarmed security guard is an employee of the school. So just to make sure that's very concrete for everyone. We have Brookfield police presence at arrival and dismissal time. So arrival and dismissal time is the most vulnerable times in the school day because the doors are open, lots and lots of people. We've all experienced the traffic at a school, lots of parent drop off at the high school, student arrivals as well in cars, plus all of our buses. So they're vulnerable times. We have to really keep an eye there, and we have police presence for that. At the end of the school year, post-Uvalde, where we were all very concerned, there could have been copycat or inspired violent acts, we made sure that the police department really made sure they supported us, and we made sure we had a full officer stationed at the elementary schools for the duration of the day. That wasn't a sustainable solution, which is one of the pieces that led to the conversations over the past 2 months. Our fire marshal and police department, their presence and feedback on emergency drills, that's another piece of law enforcement and emergency response. Mr. Blanda already talked a great deal to that, but it's important for everybody to know that if we have an emergency at the school, response time from anywhere in our community is less than 4 minutes to get more officers there and back. Ongoing meetings and communications, as I already alluded to, it is just natural ongoing communication between the school system, the schools, and the police department. And then actually, most recently, I think it was just last week, there was 2 days of active shooter training for the police officers right here at Brookfield High. So we're constantly evolving, training, and getting and being in touch. What I'd really like to do now is actually invite Officer Flynn up. Sean, if you could come up and talk a little bit about the day in the life of an SRO. You've been kind of talked to from the educators, but let's hear from one of our SROs what it's like. So Sean, please come on up.
Normally I'm presenting for middle schoolers, so cut me some slack. Most mornings start off pretty routine. I start off with the police department. I gather my necessary belongings that I'm going to need throughout the day at school, put them in my police cruiser, drive up, park in my marked police cruiser, clearly visible spot in the parking lot from the road, and I head into my office, put my things away safely and securely. I go in and check the previous police logs from the days past, see if any of our students' families have been involved in anything that we, counselors, principals might need a heads up. And then I'm going to make my way to the office, talk to Mary Liz, see if she has anything going on that day, because She knows the schedule better than Dean. And then I make my way outside for the arrival. Pre-pandemic, I would stand right in front of the entrance, greet all the students, while being able to see if anybody unauthorized was at the empty building. Post-pandemic, there's a lot more parent drop-off, so traffic is a nightmare. So kind of split my time between front of the building and the directing traffic. I then head into the building, see if she needs assistance with students who are arriving late. Then I make my way down to Mr. Petrino's 6th grade classroom. I challenge the kids to a science question every morning. The winner gets a pizza party at the end of the year. I have yet to cash in. Then a quick walk around the school, make sure all the exterior doors are locked, all the gates for the portables are locked, head back in my office, check emails, current events, things I may need for presentations that I do for the students. Drugs, alcohol, the law for 8th graders, internet safety for the 6th graders, search and seizure for the 7th graders. New this year, Demas is offering, I don't know if it's new this year, but it's new for me. Demas is offering for 5th grade emergency preparedness backpacks that the students can take home, flashlights, glow sticks, so that at home they can make emergency plans for if there's a fire in the house, things like that. So we're going to try that out this year. I also, like Mark said, PD days, probably the 26th. I'll be presenting to the staff at Wisconsin about our emergency plans, our emergency drills, because properly trained staff at the school is going to be the backbone of that emergency plan and how it plays out. Then 10:30 or so, lunch waves start, and I am either in the cafeteria or I'm outside at recess, either chatting with the kids, getting to know what's going on, playing foursquare football, whatever it is, and just building that bond with the students, because once you get that bond, much like you say something at, they're comfortable with it, they're going to tell you what's going on. So, obviously I'm part of the safety committee for the school. As an SRO, I wear many different hats in many different situations, but regardless of what's going on, where I am, I have that school radio, I have the police radio, my cell phone. If something happens in that school, I'm going. And everybody else is coming in less than 4 minutes. But I don't know, I can tell you, the SRO is the best job in the school. That is it.
Not bad for a non-middle school audience. You did original. So if I can invite the chief up now. This is the point where, while we can be confident and pleased with what we do, we're always looking to improve and make things better. And no matter what, no plan is foolproof. And there's always areas that need improvement, a vulnerability that you see, a risk area, whatever it might be. And so we assess those through everything Principal Rolando was talking about, what Sean talked about, Eric talked about, and we look through those and we get to gather that feedback, and we, again, evolve and improve our plans. We also did that with the task force when we analyzed where are our weak spots and what do we need to address. And a couple of the areas we need to address for sure is we wanted to ensure an armed presence at all of our schools. That was a piece we wanted to make sure we added on a entire school day basis. And also, as Sean said, parking that cruiser right out front. If you have a police cruiser out front, that is a serious deterrent for wannabe actors. So what I'd like to do now is just jump right into the actual enhancement plan. We have to enhance. We know. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Violence across the country continues to increase, and the shootings aren't stopping. And so we need to be prepared, and we need to protect our kids. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about our process. So we reinvigorated the task force after Uvalde, and you can see the participants. It's really important to see. Myself, Mr. Belanda, Mr. Post, our business director, Mr. Conklin, who you've heard from, our tech director, the chief, Fire Marshal D'Souza, Board members Belden, Fernandez, and Buteau. Gasperi Mertuano, who is a parent who is in the security industry. Brian Janowski, another one of our parents. He's in administration in cyber and technology in terms of security. And Mr. Durkin, who is actually an educator in a very different setting than ours, but an educator who is a principal of a high school and has a very different experience than we have in Brookfield, so really was able to add a layer for us. We had some overall objectives. Like I said, one of them was thinking about how do we get an armed presence in all the schools, but we really needed to look at building from what we did in 2012 and the iterations there post Sandy Hook. We reviewed all aspects of the plans, and we recommended that layered, stepwise, incremental improvement over time. We're going to be working on this. We worked for the last 2 months. We're going to continue for probably the rest of the year. In this slide, we talked about 6 to 8 months, but there's a lot of things we want to do. We want to really start getting that structural. There's some things we want to do to ensure, not only for this year, but that the high school and the middle school really can get up to the best level we can, as close as what you'll see with the new design with a brand new school in Candlewood Lake Elementary. So our initial focus was the staffing piece. How are we going to enhance security personnel? So we've had 4 formal task force meetings. We've looked through studies in literature. We also made sure we looked at earlier task force work. We actually met with former board leadership from post-Sandy Hook to get their input on how did they go about this decision-making process, because prior to Sandy Hook, we didn't even have SROs in the schools. So what did that decision-making process look like? A lot of input came from parents. The Youth Commission met with us, and it's important to give credit to the Youth Commission. They really championed the idea of the Say Something app this past winter through the spring. We had a lot of great meetings and dialogue there, so they were a big catalyst for us in getting the Say Something app going. Of course, discussions with other school districts, and what do you do? What does it look like for you? And you have to have a custom plan because every town is set up different, has different resources, and et cetera, et cetera. But you can learn a lot from each other. And then obviously, law enforcement recommendations and any best practices. And of course, that's why we had the chief as part of the team. So, the task force recommended to the board, which already was talked about how it went through the entire process with our elected boards, and here's where our plan is right now. And it's important to note, because it was said in a couple of public comments, and I want to correct the record, that the Board of Ed went against the police chief. That has never been a more untrue statement. The police chief, Chief Pavisi, was on the security task force and was part of the decision-making process. So, like I said, one of our big goals, add a full-time armed presence at the elementary schools because they didn't have the full SRO program. So we're going to add an SRO at each elementary school. As with any SRO, we'll report to the police department, work collaboratively with the schools, but ultimately they're a sworn officer who is in the police chain of command. For this year, the 2 additional SROs will be there, but we're looking to reduce to 1 SRO as we migrate to Candlewood Lake. So we're thinking far ahead, and we've got a budget development process that'll start to unfold come November. The other piece we want to do is add monitoring capability to complement our SROs. This is a synergistic plan. The unarmed security guards we've talked about, and we're going to be adding 5 in total to the Brookfield Public Schools. And what we're looking to do is have 2 guards specifically at the high school and 1 at the other schools. I'm going to talk about how that's going to look. So BHS is an area, at BHS, there's an area after school where we really want to heighten security there. So what we're going to do there is add an unarmed ASSO at Brookfield High School for after school and evening. ASSO stands for Armed School Security Officer. So while we have an armed presence in this plan at all of the schools during the school day, the high school is very open. There's lots of activity between athletics and drama and music and town meetings such as this. We wanted to make sure we had an armed presence during after school time as well. Take us late into the evening. We'll supplement that person with an unarmed security officer who could be monitoring cameras and also maybe another set of eyes and ears. And again, door access, an aggressive stance on door access in all of the schools is always really important. And so we had a unanimous vote of support from the task force at that point, and most everybody watching tonight and everybody here understands the full process that went through earlier this year. What I'd like is to bring the chief up just to talk a little bit about this overall plan and kind of his thought process on best practice and how this plan works and his expert opinion on it.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me to speak tonight. If you had told me 34 years ago when I became a police officer that I'd be up here arguing for police in the schools, I would have told you that you were crazy. But since I became chief, I thought the first couple of months of just dealing with budget meetings, and I thought that was a lot. The amount of hours that have gone into the planning and coming up with these recommendations to the town for enhanced security in the schools has been daunting. And I wish I could remember the word that you used for some of the meetings, but they were quite colorful. So this plan, like most of the people that spoke already tonight, is a layered approach with the added SROs into school as well. I think that the principals who spoke tonight also, they're talking about who is checking these people in and who is doing that, and the human error of having these people or secretaries doing, not that they don't do a good job, but they're doing so many jobs in the schools already. And one of the things that these officers would do would be take over those roles to add that layer, to be able to address these threats before they get into the building. Sean talked about his role and his day and what that entails. And just so you know that when you're getting the SRO, you're getting not only the security aspect of having an armed law enforcement there, but you're getting the benefit of the officers' interaction with students and the teaching levels and making them comfortable with the officers that are there and adding that other layer of security that the staff in the schools shouldn't be worried about. They shouldn't have to worry about what happened in one of the students' home the night before, nor would it be anything that they would know of. But these SROs have access to that. Sean talked about checking the log and being briefed by the officers going off duty. That extra layer that you wouldn't just get with civilians or armed security without having a police officer there is just another layer. And I think that this balanced approach that I know after talking with members of the Board of Finance is going to probably cost us dearly next year when we have to come up with a plan to fund this from our budgets, and I'm not really looking forward to that. But this is needed. And like I mentioned when I first got up here, 34 years ago, I would never thought in the world I'd be up here having to talk about how we're going to fund and how many people we need to provide this layer of security. But the plan is what it is, and I think it's a balanced plan. But like Tony mentioned earlier, this is a work in progress, and this is not the super solution to prevent anything from happening in our schools. This is one layer of that security, and I know, having been invited to be on the task force and the other things that we're tasked with, besides this personnel, staffing and security issue, dealing with the stuff, and I look forward to being part of that discussion later. But it's a fluid plan. It's going to be revisited. We have a plan in place for the start of school this year to have officers there, like I think Dr. Burrell mentioned. So there's not going to be a gap. Whether the town decides to support this plan or not, we're still going to address the security issues as best we can within our needs. And we're having staffing issues just like they are in most departments across the country. But I think that adding these people to the schools at a minimum creates that additional layer. With all the security enhancements of the buildings that were already discussed, there are flaws, and we're not going to know what the flaws are with this new plan until we get it in place. And we can address those as we see fit. We have a very good relationship with the schools, and I think they're open to discussion, and no one's above saying, yeah, we have a problem here. We knew where some of the gaps were, and the task force tried to address some of those, and it was a pretty dynamic group of people that had very strong opinions on whether these people should be armed or unarmed, and what their role is, and what they're going to be doing. So I think this plan as it stands right here, right now, is a balanced plan, and I do support it. I know that we're not going to make everybody happy, but this is 100 times better than what we were dealing with last year. You want the right person in the job. You don't want a police officer who doesn't want to be there or has just worked his 8-hour shift and found out 10 minutes before that he's going to be stuck, ordered to work at the school to do security there. You want people that want to be there, that have the right temperament, that have the right attitude, like Officer Flynn, and some of our new SROs that are going to be in all the schools to do the job. And it goes without saying how important it is getting the right person in those roles. Did I say anything? All right. So, if anybody has any questions for me about the plan or like that, feel free. I think we addressed most of that.
One. So I skipped over here. So we're at a point now where we talked about not only what we do, we talked about the plan for what we're going to do as the year starts. Chief addressed the interim plan while we work on the new plan, which is to ensure that we have the youth officer and the SROs covering all of our buildings. And the next step I wanted to talk about, and I know the presentation's getting a little long, but I think it's going to get a little bit more fun for everybody here, because we're talking about the future now in terms of Candlewood Lake, and I think this really ties in nicely because not everybody knows the security design that in the plan that's going into Candlewood Lake. So there, as you can see, there's 5 areas, and we're going to be turning over a different Eric's going to be switching off of this PowerPoint into another. Our friends from Tecton put together about a 10-slide presentation that Mr. Checo from the MBC is going to go through. We're talking about security, entry control. You're going to see very similar themes here. Security and entry control, the principles of actual site design, so purposely designing the building with safety and security in mind, lockdown abilities and hardware, obviously the intruder-resistant glass that we talk about, and also panel light glass, and then certainly access control and cameras, etc. So Paul, would you like to come up? And Eric's up in the back, he's going to switch that off for us. So I think he's got the new one ready to go.
Thank you. Good evening. Paul Checo, I'm the chair of the Municipal Building Committee. But before I start about Candlewood Lake Elementary School, for those of you who don't know, December 14, 2012, I sat on this Board of Education with 4 other parents, well, 6 other parents, but 5 of us who had students in kindergarten through 5th grade. It wasn't an easy day. The 5 days after that, the 7 of us walked all 4 schools with Robin Montgomery as our chief and put in place a lot of the initial safety procedures. 5 days later at a Board of Education meeting, Rita Steffen, myself, Scott McCarthy, Susan Green, Jane Miller, Harry Shaver, and Victor Katz voted on man traps, safety glazing, access control, security windows, and all those, and a third-party security person to come out and evaluate all our schools moving forward. So it's very dear and personal that this has been carried forward, and I commend everybody on the School Safety Committee and the Security Task Force for moving this forward and evolving this as we heard early on. Since that time in my professional life, I've spent the better part of the last 10 years evaluating school safety plans for various districts and for other clients in private schools, evaluating a lot of the snake oil salesmen that we see in the products that are out there. And I've always preached that there's a dichotomy between building safety and fire safety. There are opposite ends of the spectrum. And every obstacle you put in the way for delaying somebody from coming in is an obstacle for somebody leaving during fire safety. And how do we achieve that balance? And I think with Candlewood Lake Elementary School, in starting this, we've reached a great balance where we have points of entry for entering the school, and everything else is an exit. Everything else is purely egress for fire safety and getting the students out. In this was such a collaborative effort between Tech-On Architects, the district personnel, Eric Conklin, the security side. I think Eric's Eric Rory, you're still working on things on the technological side and safety and cameras. We've given him carte blanche and he's put together a plan, and I don't think he ever realized how much time he'd have to spend putting into the school. But he's done a great job. He's risen to the task, and he's put together a technology and security package that's phenomenal in the school. And we're excited to see it be implemented and see how it works in conjunction with everybody else. But in creating safe environments today, we go back to a report by Professor John Embry-Riddle, who actually came up with those initial tenets of detect, delay, deter. And in that, a lot of what's in that report from 2013 is actually reflected in the school. So, let's go. Yep. That's kind of true. Okay, secure entry control, right? Two-step entry sequence. We've all preached this. We all know about pressing the buzzer, identifying yourself. We have the 2 points of entry, one for the lower grades, one for the upper grades at the school. They both have double entrances that are secure. They both have personnel at windows. And those are the only 2 points of entry at the front of the school. That's it. Secure vestibule. Visitors go directly. They don't go directly into the school. They actually, once they're buzzed in, have to go into the office, and then they're let into the school. So it's a little double, little double man trap, if you will. Those administrative offices are orchestrated, and we'll go to the floor plan in a minute. Those administrative offices are oriented at the front of the school. They have a 270-degree view of the parking lot, the entryway, and everything that's happening from Candlewood Lake Road all the way in. So visual control over that entry is immense. The principles of the site is the next tenet here, where you need to create space between your front entrance and where your parking and your visitors areas are. And what we have at Candlewood Lake Elementary School is, I'm going to flip. As you can see, there's this big green space at the front between the parking lot and the school. And in that green space, those roadways that are leading up to the entrances of the school have bollards. You're not going to get a vehicle through there. It's small enough that if you have emergency personnel and you have the gators, you can fit between them, but you're not fitting a car or vehicle through them. That's the space we need to create, because when somebody comes up to that school and parks a car, you have time between the time to get out and have to walk across that grass that somebody can lock down that school. If somebody sees out that front window across that there's a perceived threat, you can lock down the school immediately. So that building layout, that natural landscape, only gives you those 3 points of entry at the front. 2 main ones, and then a secondary one that's in the cafeteria that's only for voting. But those 2 points of entry for the main entrance and for the pre-K entrance both have bridges that go across. And those bridges, underneath those bridges, obviously, is the original stream bed. So for somebody to have to come down into that stream bed and come back up, is another deterrent. They have to come across that bridge in order to have a direct route to the front of the school. And again, it's a highly visible sightline at that location. So, with that, we talked about natural access, we talked about natural surveillance. You can see the circulation path. You can see at the front what we're talking about with the turret, with the gully and the bridges. There we go. Public spaces up front, classroom spaces in the rear of the building. So portion, and I want to get to the building plan because I think that tells the greatest story of them all. I'll come back to the pretty pictures in a moment. Okay. So if you look at the building plan, we have all the common spaces up front. We have the library and media center, we have the cafeterias, we have the gymnasium. Through there, we have two north-south corridors, one at the front that traverses across the administrative wing, one at the rear that goes across the back, and that allows access into the classroom wings. Both are based on a slight curve. And you say, well, why would you do just kind of that slight curve? It avoids having a direct sight line. So if you do have an intruder in the school, and you do have an event, not being able to see around the curve provides an additional level of safety, provides additional delay for somebody to be able to get to a safe space, to be able to get to a classroom. Individually, you'll see these blue bars there. Every portion of this school, from the entrances, cafeterias, 3 classroom wings, up and down, can get compartmentalized at the push of that button. So all the doors are on magnetic hold opens. Allows free access during the day. When this is instituted, when there's an event that happens, and those doors close, it does not get compartmentalized in school. Every door, every window has an identifier, both in the interior and the exterior. Once those sections are compartmentalized, there is no ingress to any of those compartments. There's only egress out of the school. So if you did have somebody who was able to get into one of those compartments and everybody was locked down, the only place for that person to go is out. They have to exit the school. They can't get into other areas of the school at all. That has been one of the major things we've learned is how do we take a large building and break it into lots of smaller buildings, provide fire safety, and provide building security at the same time. And the use of these doors is one of the major factors. There's no hardware on the other sides of a lot of these doors between the staircases. So even if somebody goes into the staircase and wants to come in, there's nothing for them to be able to pull. They're locked down and they can't even force it open. So there's a few, few security features in that way. The classroom box sets themselves are double-sided, they're keyed on both sides. These have a visual indicator on the inside, so the teacher can visually know without having to go over and check the door that that door is locked. They're in the glazing in the classroom, in that door, is what we call directional obscurity. You can see straight in, when that door is closed and locked, you can see straight in to the teacher's workstation. And as soon as you move to the side, you can't see. It provides a huge blind spot for any intruder being able to see into that classroom. It's a honeycomb glass. It's called directional visibility, and it's one of those other safety features we just put in. You may say, well, why isn't the visual indicator for the locking of the door on the outside? Well, we want teachers to be able to see, and what happens if somebody keeps going down the hallway, visually they see the doors are locked, they're moving on if you're an intruder. If they have to stop at each door, again, we talk about delay. Every time we delay gives law enforcement enough time to at least respond to the building. And that's what we've learned. Unfortunately, Sandy Hook took just about 6 minutes from start to finish. If we can delay it, responders were there in 2 minutes and 35 seconds. If we can delay it, hopefully we can delay it long enough to give everybody time to respond and to neutralize anything to happen. I won't pretend to be doing your job. I just need you to give you guys enough time to be able to do your job. And the last, we talked about security and access control. We have access control in all the doorways. Again, that was in coordination with Mr. Conklin. We have security cameras throughout. And again, we don't give locations of security cameras, of safety buttons, of the panic buttons. We just know that they are throughout this building. We do have them. This isn't cooperating, John.
Eric, will you advance the slide, maybe? That's the last slide.
That's the last one? Okay.
Would you like to go back? Is there anything you need to go back to?
Well, if anybody wants to go back to a particular slide, just let me know. Is there something else you'd like to see or talk about or hear about? Again, this was done in conjunction. We were facilitators of the process. We didn't come up with the security measures. We absolutely gave our input, but it was a collaborative effort between the police department, I know, reviewed. I know the district reviewed. We have the technology department. We talked with Dan Caldwell. Everybody, this was a collaborative effort. And again, we were facilitators in this process. We got input from everybody. I don't think there's anybody who wasn't asked a question. This was, we had Friday morning meetings with various departments throughout the town, not only the board and education side, but DPW and everybody else, to make sure you can have fire access around the building, emergency access vehicles around the building, so you can come from the building from 100 or 360 degrees. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry for the long. I'm going to say this one. That's right.
Thanks, Paul. Obviously, a great deal of planning has gone into that. Eric, if you're still up there, can you go back to the first PowerPoint for a second? And then I'm going to end the presentation and I'll turn it over to Mr. Belden if there's questions from the board or conversation that needs to be had. So Eric, if you could, I'll move it down. There we go. So I want to end with student wellness because there's been several questions that have been asked. Well, what are you doing for student wellness? What are you doing for student wellness? Well, we do a lot. We've been building that for quite a long time here in district, and even this year we'll continue to add and enhance. That's credit to everybody in this district, and credit to the Board of Education, their leadership in the town, and the support we've gotten for our budgets. There's a lot of things we do. I'm not going to get into great detail, but I've highlighted a number of things we do here because we've been focused on kind of the physical enhancing the presence of folks, armed security guards, and having this conversation. And that was the intention of this summer, was to do that work. And a lot of structural and technological work is going to be going on with the task force going forward. But in terms of the wellness supports and mental health supports, there's a number of things going on. So just to highlight that for everybody as part of this presentation, because both PowerPoints we present tonight will be publicly available. We want to make sure everybody can watch these videos as well and see what we're doing. So, as we know, 5 years ago we began the integration of the Yale Ruler approach to social and emotional learning, and it's fully implemented across the district. Adding an anonymous reporting system and adding security personnel, I think, will be very good for student wellness, and the feedback we receive from students that they want more of that. Training faculty in trauma-informed instruction, having social workers, school counselors, and psychologists at all of our schools, having added social workers at center and at the high school, adding the psychologists at the middle school, adding the executive function and SEL support of the paraprofessionals. I talked about that earlier. In kindergarten this year, the high school, they gave a presentation at the last meeting in July on the civic partnership for mental health support for students and their families. right there hosted, private mental health support, right there hosted by our high school. Brookfield Cares, our longstanding partnership with programming on substance abuse, mental health, etc. We've developed updated systems of academic and behavioral support. We've added special education teachers. We've added speech pathologists. We've added math interventionists this year. We've added reading interventionists at the high school over the years. Recently, Dr. Ruby talked about this earlier tonight, mentioning the instructional coaches with embedded professional learning for lesson design, helping teachers get better and better at engaging students. Overall, when you engage students and have wonderful instruction, you have better behavior, you have more excited students, and that's good for wellness holistically for children. And all those coaches are in place. So there's really a very big focus on mental health and wellness. I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in all the physical stuff we're talking about over the last 2 months. So, Eric, if you could blank the screen there, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Belden, and I'm sure there's conversation or questions to be had. Thank you very much for your attention tonight. So the chief is still here, and I see that Mr. Checo is still here, so we certainly could go to anybody for questions.
I want to thank you and thank everybody who spoke tonight for giving a very thorough review of what we do with security. And it was an interesting discussion leading tonight, because on the one side, you don't want to tell everybody about what you're doing in security, but as a board, we said we need to share the fundamentals, because everybody was making assumptions. And I really appreciate you taking the time, without giving away the building, to talk through the different things that we have done and that we're doing. And the new elementary school has got a lot of stuff built into it. So I appreciate all the hard work there as well. Let me just ask the board, we've had a chance to see some of these presentations in our executive sessions over the last weeks. Any questions you have for Dr. Burrell or to any of the speakers tonight?
I do. Consistency and consistency of procedures is crucial. Are all the schools, doing the drills the same? Like, for example, a lockdown drill. Is the lockdown drill at center school the same as the lockdown drill at high school? I'm not talking about the verbiage that we use, the language. Obviously, that's going to differ, but we should be consistent in doing the same drills. Is that the case?
I would say it's the case, but if it's a question, or if there is a question that it's not being implemented consistently, we certainly will bring that up at our district leadership meeting. For all intention, there is a procedure for lockdowns, there's a procedure for fire drills, of course developmentally appropriate, so there should be a similarity, but each level is different as well, as you know. So should be implemented very similarly.
Okay, if we can get an update on that from the administrators.
Of course.
And the other, I noticed on one of the slides, it said we're taking an aggressive stance on door access. What does that mean?
So one of the things that we want to make sure in terms of the security guards that we have in the plan, and also the SROs, and having that extra strength, adding that complementary strength to the SROs, is having the security guards. And that aggressive stance is, and the chief talked about it, is having someone more focused and dedicated on the greeting aspect and sign-in aspect of visitors to the building. So that's the stance. And that was the door. I thought you were talking about entry joy, but yes, to your point, Rosa, door checking to make sure doors are actually closed and locked.
Yeah, I've got to add to that, though, is the specific discussion we had in our Board of Ed meeting was after school. We have, you can walk in the front door of Brookfield High School, you can walk into the gym end, being more aggressive on having fewer entrances after school, right? Because you'll have an armed officer, but they can't be everywhere at once. So it'll help if we're more aggressive on keeping access funneling through a narrow area, especially here at the high school, after school.
Yes, and once, specific to the high school, once we know we have funding secured, we already have initial plans kind of thought through of how we will manage door access in this area of the building, the gym auditorium area, which gets a lot of traffic, as well as the back and the main entry.
So hearing no more questions. that will bring us to the end of this part of the presentation. I thank you, and I think when we get to 3 main points, this will be probably number 1 on that list to get everybody to just get a chance to see this. And you know, for those of you, I'm saying this after the fact now, I'm hoping people take the time to listen to these presentations. So moving on, we do have some additional business we need to do this evening. It'll go quickly, I think. We have 3 policies, and Amy, since they're all first reads, I would suggest you make the motions and combine them, and we'll turn it to Debbie for an update.
I will move that the board approve new policy number 6164.11, instruction, drugs, tobacco, alcohol for first reading as recommended by the Policy and Communications Subcommittee, as well as approve new policy number 6159, instruction, individualized education program, special education program for first reading as recommended by the Policy and Communications Subcommittee, and that the board approve new policy number 6171, special education for first reading as recommended by the Policy and Communications Subcommittee.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Debbie, why don't I turn it over to you and kind of let you give us an overview on what these 3 policies are about?
Sure. All 3 of these policies are ones that we don't currently have. We follow the policies, but we didn't have formal written documentation of the policies, and these are mandatory per CAVE. So we would be adding them to our policies based on CAVE's input. So the first one is drugs, tobacco, and alcohol, 6164.11. This is really very cut and dried. It basically just says that the district will make every effort to educate staff and students about the harmful effects of drugs, tobacco, and alcohol, and that the staff shall be provided with professional development and tools to carry out that teaching. So that's the first one. The second one is regarding IEPs and special education programs. This one, it's very lengthy and there's a lot of detail in there. This includes extensive input from our special ed director, Mrs. DeNicola Hickman, and it really has to do with spelling out all the steps and processes that are required when a student is identified as having special needs and determining whether an IEP is required and how a PPT gets put into motion. So there's lots of very technical definitions in here. Happy to have Mrs. DeNicola Hickman's input on this one. But I think it very clearly outlines all the steps that are required. And again, we're already following all these steps, but this just formalizes it as a policy. The last one is 6171, special education. And this one, again, really just defines special education and it makes a commitment or establishes an understanding that the district will provide a free and appropriate public education to any student that requires it up to age 22, is it? I think it's 22. And it just defines the different laws and Americans with Disability Acts that would lead a child to fall under one of those categories, and that the district will provide special education to those students. So again, pretty straightforward. We follow all of these procedures already. This one has also been reviewed by the special education director, and her comments are included in there. That was it.
questions on the broad summary? And so for the public, what it needs to go for a first read is we all receive the document, we get a summary, we all then have a chance to review it and send questions to the policy committee. And 30 days from now, we would actually approve it. So that's called the second read. So this is it's a routine for getting the board the time to review policies and get them properly vetted and done by all of us. So when would you need input on that?
I actually forgot, I don't have my calendar with me, so do you know what our next policy meeting date is? September 7th may be our next meeting.
Okay. So get input, questions and inputs to you and suggestions by September 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. The board will work with that. Okay. So any other questions from any board members? Okay, all in favor of receiving these as a first read?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, we're to the second round of public comment. There were no other people that had asked to speak. Is there anyone else in the room? There's no one else in the room other than the people who've been doing presentations. So Candlewood Lake Elementary School building project update.
Okay. The MBC met last night. We were actually at our board retreat, but I got our update from one of the members. Just to kind of give you an update on where different areas of the building are. As you know, I've kind of said it time and time again that the building as a whole is in different phases in different areas of the building. So some areas look very finished and other areas look very not finished, like they're just beginning. So the area that is the multi-purpose area, the cafeteria, the office, gym, the pre-K wing, that's if you're looking at the building on the left, it's the lower level on the left, that area has still a lot of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing that's ongoing, but most of those areas are nearly complete, so framing has started there. In the kindergarten and through fourth grade wing, so those are like those are the two, the left and the middle classroom wings, bottom and top, right? Those drywall is complete in most of the areas, or they're nearly there. On the right side of the building, so you're looking at the second grade and fifth grade above, everything is closed up and painting and tiling is ongoing, and it's actually complete in some of those areas. So that side looks like it's really almost finished, or at least, it gives that perception. Some other exciting things are that stairwells are actually going in now, and the very huge generator. So I was told it's a very, very big generator, but that is in place. And that is getting hooked up, and I'm sure if Paul has any other things to add, he's here, but, and the board will have an opportunity to take another walk through the building in September. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you thought about the students that, like how the seniors do the walk through all the buildings? Will the students have an opportunity to walk through the building before? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, Huckleberry, before it's demolished.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a celebratory idea that comes from citizens or the PTO, or it's practical, it's something we could have an opportunity for, we're willing to entertain.
Okay.
So for the TV, since we didn't have a microphone, the answer was, if there's a great idea, we'll really think about it and see what we can do. Always want to celebrate it where we can. So
we have a couple of, so there's some brand new construction progress photos that we can share. So this is the front or main entrance. As I last reported, a lot of the masonry work is done on the front, so it's really starting to look like the picture. Which is a huge change from just a couple months ago when we shared these pictures. And here's the north classroom wing. So what you're looking at is the larger playscape area, which is the second grade, near the second grade wing. That's, as you can see, like in the construction photos, that's the sort of area that's more done. So you see the windows are in, and the exterior work is now starting. The main entrance hall, what has been called the grand staircase, is that in yet? It's not in yet, but some of the other, 3 of the stairwells and some of the classroom wings have gone in. This is the multi-purpose space. As you can see, some of the walls are really starting to come together and get closed up, so we're starting to see, get a real feel for the space. The cafeteria, this is a really big space with a lot of light, so that's starting to look really nice. The administrative area in the first floor, this along with the previous picture are some of the areas that have, that are sort of last in terms of progress and the order of how they're going. The gymnasium, last time we took a walk through, there was no floor in there, so now there's, the floor has been poured and the walls are up. And the gross motor skills room, so that's getting put together. And the smaller cafeteria for the little ones. And the entry to the neighborhood. So in some of the wings, it's probably a little more closed up here, but as you can see, there's a lot of framing and mechanical stuff that's still ongoing, but is complete in a lot of the areas. And there's our typical classroom. So some of them have drywall and paint going in, and they're looking really good. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for sending those back.
Okay, thanks for the update. Next up is 3 main points.
So we already mentioned that the school security presentation would be at the top of the list. I thought I would also do an update on Candlewood Lake Elementary School to reiterate some of the stuff that Rosa just reviewed. And then I thought the last thing could just sort of be a general back to school update about the free lunches, when schedules will be published online, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say
Okay.
So I think there's consensus with everyone that the focus in on Dr. Ruby's our words and her words.
Okay.
Okay. Upcoming events.
On August 23rd, student schedules will be available in Power School. The annual consent review process must be completed and approved by the office before people can view it. August 30th is the first day of school, a full day, and September 5th is Labor Day, no school. At Center, the new to Brookfield first grade orientation is Monday, August 29th from 2 to 2:30. The first grade meet and greet is Monday, August 29th from 2:30 to 3. The kindergarten meet and greet will be Tuesday, August 30th. The schedules will be communicated by classroom teachers. And they have a PTO-sponsored back-to-school playdate at Kids Kingdom, Saturday, August 27th, 11 to 12:30. The rain date will be Sunday, August 28th. At Huckleberry, the school will be open for families to find their child's classroom on Tuesday, August 23rd from 2 to 4, and from Wednesday, August 24th from 9 to 11. And Huckleberry is also having a PTO-sponsored back-to-school playdate at King's Kingdom on Tuesday, August 23rd from 4:30 to 6. At Wisconsin, Tuesday, August 23rd at 10:30, there's an orientation program for families new to the district. And Wisconsin will be open for student walkthroughs on August 23rd from 2 to 4, and Wednesday, August 24th from 9 to 11. Chromebook rentals may also be picked up during these times, as well as Thursday, August 25th from 4 to 7. And at Brookfield High School on August 25th, all fall sports practices will start that haven't already. August 23rd is new student orientation at 6 p.m. in the auditorium, and Chromebook rental or purchase pickup is Thursday, August 25th from 4 to 7, and Saturday, August 27th from 8 to 12, and that's in the library. and they have their open house on September 8th at 6 p.m. in the auditorium. That is all I have.
The list has gotten long again. So, thank you.
We're having a meet and greet for the middle school on August 28th for 5th and 6th grade at JJ Sachs, and the next day on August 29th for 7th and 8th graders. It's from 4 to 7 at JJ Sachs, and it's a fundraiser for the 8th grade. It's also a meet and greet your classmates and exchange schedules, and there will be a miniature golf tournament with lots of good prizes for the winners, only the winners.
Okay, so that's it for this evening, and without objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.